if the outdoor weather won't cooperate, you can always spend some time doing some preserving. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Kim's Cozy Corner. My name is Kim, and we're going to be canning today. Last week, I showed a video of a freezer disaster. One of my freezers went out and I lost a ton of food. And most of it was meats, but I'm down to one deep freezer and two refrigerators. And so I have nowhere to put my food in the freezers. They're both jam-packed full. So today, all we're going to do is can, and can. The first thing that we're going to can today are some leafy greens. So I have some kale and some collard greens that I'm going to can today. Usually, I will wilt those down, put those in a Ziploc bag, and I'll just put those in the deep freezer. And I'll pull them out and use them when I need them. But since freezer space is limited, I am going to can my leafy greens. And I've done it before. It's not something I typically do because I go through my greens so fast. But if I can my greens, they're good for several years, where if I put them in the freezer, in my mind, they're good for just about a year. But that's what we're doing today. I already have my greens wilted down. And your greens are low acid foods. So low acid foods need to be pressure canned. So I have my Presto digital camera canner already set up back here, ready to go. I already have jars warming in the canner as well. And so you need to pressure can leafy greens because water bath canning, you can't get the temperature high enough to kill off all that bad bacteria. So in order to do that, you have to pressure can. I have two books, canning books, that I use to can all my food if it's not an old-timey recipe from my grandmother. And so in here, I will be using this Ball Book of Canning. And there will be a link to this in the description below. So if you're interested in this book, it'll be below. But in here, there's a recipe on page 391 that says leafy greens. And that's the recipe that we're using today. I am going to hot pack, and I am doing quart-sized jars. Quart-sized jars say that they need to process for 90 minutes. So I already have my canner set up for 90 minutes. And we're going to fill the jars, and we're going to get this one started because this is one of many batches that we're going to have to do today. All right, my jars are warm. So let's get those out and let's get them filled. I really, really like my Presto digital canner. I can water bath can in here as well as pressure can. I don't have to turn the stove on, and so it keeps that kitchen from heating up. So for these greens, I am going to put in a teaspoon of salt. I know I have at least 3 jars, so let's start with 3. Teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon if I was doing pint-sized jars, but since I'm doing quarts, that's a teaspoon of salt. So we got 3 jars ready to go. I'm not going to use the liquid unless I just have to, but I'm going to put hot boiling water in with the greens instead. So this is a hot pack. Put it here so you can see what I'm doing a little better. When I've canned greens before, my leafy greens before, I think I packed them too tight. So I am going to put fewer in each of the jars this time. It was like there was no room for any liquid. So I am not going to put quite as many in here. And this is a mixed batch of greens. This is kale and collard greens. Kale and collard greens. Now, I'm not seasoning them like to taste or anything like that. We'll do that when we get them out to actually cook them, because all I did was blanch them. They only cook for about, I don't know, 10 minutes maybe. Maybe 10 minutes. In addition to these greens, leafy greens, we are going to do some corn. And the corn is already in the freezer, but we're going to take the corn out the freezer so that I can have more room in the freezer. So we're going to make some pint-sized jars of corn. And I think I got a few green beans that we're going to get out the freezer and can them up to make space. That's the goal anyway. We'll see how far we get. We just had some wind and rain come in from the hurricane that came up through the Gulf. And yes, I am in Southwest Ohio, and yes, we did receive winds from that storm. There are power outages all over the neighborhood, but we were very blessed and fortunate that we didn't lose power. It's still raining though. I think I'm gonna get all of this in 3 jars. It's still raining, so we can't work outside, so great excuse to get in here and do some canning. I prefer to be in the garden. But if I can't get in the garden, we need to do some canning. I really don't want to have to buy a freezer. Not right now anyway. So if we can make it without it, that's what we're going to do. All right, 3 jars. Now we need to put the liquid in there. So I have water boiling in my coffee pot. So we're going to fill these jars up, leaving 1 inch of head space. We're going to have to debubble, right? Because the one thing I want to make sure I do is completely cover these greens up. That's where I messed up last time. To debubble, I just got a chopstick here. It's little air pockets be down in there. And you be thinking you got a full jar of liquid, and it'd be a half jar of liquid because of the air bubbles. And I got this about right. When I harvested these, I said that I had 1 meal of collard greens and 2 meals of kale, and I mixed the 2 together. So with them mixed together, there are 3 meals right there. So I got it just right. All right, we're gonna wipe the rims. Checking for nicks and dings. Get our rim, our lids, put our lids on. In the description below, I will have links to all of the products that I use. Fingertip tight. And we're gonna put them back in there. Put our lid on. Lock it down. And what I like so much about this, it just tells me what to do. So it told me to fill the jars. I filled the jars. And now I'm going to tell it, go to the next step. And now this is going to first get back up to, well, not get back up to it. First, it has to get to pressure. And once it gets to pressure, it's going to stay at pressure for about 10 minutes. And then it's going to start counting down for 90 minutes. So this is going to go for a long time. Since this is going to have to go for such a long time, I am also going to use my InstaPot, which also is a digital pressure canner as well, to pressure can some corn so we can have multiple systems going at the same time. So my InstaPot has a canning setting on it as well as my Presto digital canner. So the next thing we'll do is get some corn going. Before I jump over into processing corn, here's some tomatoes that I processed and I didn't bring you with me. And so I had planned on making tomato sauce with them, but I got tired, y'all, and I didn't do it. So all I did was stew the tomatoes. That's it. I just stewed them and I canned them. And so I can turn these tomatoes into whatever I need them to be. But there are 5 jars of stewed tomatoes. I will be doing some tomatoes today, and I will bring you along for the tomatoes that I processed today, and I'll be using basically the same process. So just because you didn't see me stew the tomatoes, don't worry, because you're going to see me do some tomatoes today. So now we're going to go ahead and move over to the corn. For the corn, I already have the corn in my pot here. Show you, and it's a big pot of corn that I got out my freezer. I mean, this pot is full. I don't know, what is that, 8 quarts? I don't know. It's a big pot of corn right here. So I've already got it out the freezer. I got my recipe right here. It's on page 390 of the same canning book. I'm using pint-sized jars, and I'm going to use my InstaPot. And we are going to can them for 85 minutes. I can only do 4 jars at a time in my InstaPot. It's small. I have one more digital pressure canner, but y'all, I don't want to go downstairs to get it. It's a bigger one where I can do like 8 jars or something like that, but I don't want to go get it. So we're going to just make use of what we got. So I can do 4 jars. They are all warm. I've been warming them while I was waiting. For the corn, I'm going to use a half a teaspoon of salt in each container. And I know I got at least 4 jars, so we're going to fill them all up with the salt. I use a canning salt. There's no iodine in it, so you want an iodine-free salt. I should have said that earlier, but I didn't. But there's the salt. And we're going to fill up these 4 containers. We're going to leave an inch of head space. And again, I'm going to try not to pack them down. I want to make sure that there's plenty of room for liquid so the kernels don't dry out. In the book, it says that if you have young kernels, that they can turn a little bit brown, but it doesn't affect the safety of the product. It actually said that in the canning book. So depends on what kind of kernels you have. If they're young, immature kernels, then that could happen. So this corn was frozen. I thawed it out, heated it up so that the corn, the jars, oh, that one's too much, and the little bit of water that goes in the bottom of the canner are roughly all the same temperature. Now I'm working on filling the liquid up. And for corn, I can use the liquid that the corn's in, or I can put boiling water in it. For the corn, I can use either one. That one looks right. All right. Still need to do the air bubbles. So I give it a good mix. Didn't pack it down, which that's something I always do, and you shouldn't do that. Don't pack it down. Make sure there's plenty of room in there for the liquid. Wipe the rims. And I do have some wide mouth and some regular mouth jars, so some of both. So we're going to grab our corn. We're going to put it over here. So I got my 4 jars in here because that's all it will hold. It's 4 pint-sized jars. Again, this is my InstaPot. This is an InstaPot Max. I will have the link to this in the description below. You will be putting water in your canner. The water in my canner comes up about just under halfway on my jars. There is a rack underneath under the jars, and the water is coming up just under halfway on the jars. I usually only use this for cooking like rice and slow cook products and that kind of stuff. But when I'm canning, y'all, I will use all of my stuff. We're going to cook for 1 hour, 25 minutes, max pressure. And we are going to start. So we are pressure canning Same thing for this device as with my Presto digital canner. We got to get up to temperature first. Once we get up to temperature, it's going to stay there for about 10 minutes, and then it will start pressure canning. But that's it. I don't have to do anything else on this. And when it gets done, we're going to let the pressure come down naturally, and that's needed. Do not try to make the pressure come down faster. You want it to come down naturally back to room temperature. It needs that extra time at that higher pressure to truly kill off all of those bad bacteria. So I watch a lady, I think it's called Rose Red Homestead. And if that's not right, I will put it down below. I love watching her channel. Honestly, she's a scientist, right? She worked in research and development, and she ran all kinds of tests on different pressure canners and that kind of stuff. And she has this canner. And in order to get the proper kill, you need to let it come all the way back down naturally. Don't force that pressure off. So for the InstaPot Max is on, it's doing its thing. It's going to come up, and when it gets done, we will take these out and we'll put some more in. But before then, hopefully the other cans will be out, or the other jars will be out, and then we will add corn to the other canner. So we're going to keep both of them going because after the corn, we have green beans that we're going to do, and I think tomato sauce. I think spaghetti sauce, marinara sauce. I think is what we're going to do with the tomatoes. Haven't decided yet, but I got plenty of time because all of this corn, we got several hours worth of corn to can up today. So I will bring you back when something is coming out the canner so we can keep this project going. The greens are out, and so we're working on our second canister of corn. I'm putting the corn in these 1.5-pint size jars. I really like the 1.5-pint size jars. Usually a pint isn't enough. Usually. That's just not enough. But then a quart is too much. So a 1.5 pints is perfect. Now I have a granite countertop, and it will cool my jars so quickly. That's why I have them on a placemat or plate or something, just to keep my jars from cooling down too quickly. Getting the air bubbles out, leaving an inch of headspace. Now this corn is super, super, super sweet. If it wasn't, I could have put just a hair of sugar in there, and it could have sweetened it up just a little bit. But this corn is already sweet enough to give you a cavity, so we're not going to add any sugar to this corn. I love these 1.5-pint size jars. They are just very difficult to find. And when you do find them, they're so expensive. So every now and then, my local grocery store messes up and they buy the 1.5 pints, and then they put them on clearance. Y'all know I buy every last one I can put my hands on. Let's get her started back up. All right, we're moving on to green beans. It's actually the next morning. I pulled all of the corn out of the pressure cooker, pressure canner, and put those to the side, and I went to bed, y'all. It's the next morning. It's still rainy outside, so it's just going to be another day in the house doing things around the house. So I figured we will just continue with this process. No reason to rush it all into one day. So we're moving on to the beans. So these are green beans from the garden that I put in my freezer, in my deep freezer. We're going to get them canned up as well. Last week, I did pick a handful of green beans. I already have them blanching here. And we're now going to add the frozen beans to them. I had people ask, do I blanch my beans before I freeze them? If I was going to leave this as the final state for the beans, then yes, I would blanch them for just a few minutes and then I would freeze them. But if they're only going to be in the freezer for just a little bit, then I just wash, break, and put them in the freezer. And then I come back and I blanch them all at one time. But this is the last of the beans. I had to throw 1 gallon container out with the freezer issue. Honestly, I think the beans would have been okay, but they were in the bottom of the deep freezer and they were floating in meat juice. So they were floating in complete disgusting liquid. So I threw everything that was floating in that liquid out. And then this is all I have left. There are just a few beans left in the garden. So, but I'm still eating off of last year's beans, y'all. I have a ton of beans and I've harvested a ton of beans this year. So no great loss over 1 bag. I've also gifted a ton of beans this year to family and friends. So from a bean standpoint, we're in good shape. The beans in here is a mixture of whatever's coming in the garden. So you're going to see many different sized beans in here. Beans, again, is a low acidic food. So for the beans, we are going to pressure can the beans. And we are going to do them for 25 minutes. We're going to use 1.5-pint size jars. And we're going to add just a little bit of salt and a little bit of sugar. And we're going to add just a little bit of vinegar. For if you have never seen me preserve my beans before, we have the way I cook my beans. This is my grandmother's recipe. And my grandmother didn't have a pressure canner up until many, many years later in life. And so in order to preserve her beans, she turned them into what I believe people call dilly beans today, where she preserved them in vinegar so she could water bath can them. And so to water bath can, you got to have a really nice acidic level to your foods. Green beans isn't one of them. And so she added vinegar to get it to where it needed to be so she could water bath can. Now, I am going to pressure can just because, one, it's faster, much faster. And I know it's a safer process than water bath canning when I'm dealing with a low acidic food. But I grew up on that green bean with that little hint of vinegar. I grew up on that. So we love that taste. So I'm going to use my grandmother's recipe, but I am going to pressure can those beans. So just to give you a heads up, for the green beans, we will be doing a teaspoon of sugar, a teaspoon of salt, and 2 tablespoons of vinegar. And that's it. So right now I'm just waiting for these beans to boil and blanch real quick, and we will keep going. I've already got the pressure canner cleaned up. I got the jars warming, so we will just keep on moving. While we are waiting on those beans, let me show you what I got. I ended up with 10 jars of corn, and I ended up with 3 jars of mixed greens. So we will be adding green beans to this as well as tomatoes before we're done for the day. The beans are ready and the jars are warm. We're going to now add our salt and our sugar. I'm putting just under a teaspoon because these are 1.5 pints. They're not quarts. So I'm put just a little under a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to fill the 3 1.5-pint jars first. I'm saving this quart jar and this little baby one just in case I need them. Just under a teaspoon of sugar. I will add my vinegar at the end once I get them all leveled out. So I have dragon tongue beans in here. I have Roma 2, which is an Italian flat green bean. I have Contender. I have Landreth. I have some yellow wax beans. It's any and all kinds of beans that I had available. So you're going to see many different colors and shapes in here. You can raw pack your beans. I don't, because you can't get as many beans in the jar when you do it that way. But that is an option. I like to blanch so I can get more beans in a jar. How about that, y'all? I used every jar I had prepared. Every one. So we're going to put our vinegar in. Now again, you don't need to put vinegar in here. Regular green beans do not require it if you're going to pressure can. We need an inch of headspace. I mean, and honestly, just the best way to think about it, if you are pressure canning, you need an inch of headspace. If you are water bath canning, you need a ½ inch of headspace. Kind of rule of thumb. It's one way to think about it. Got to get the air bubbles out, because air will be trapped in and between your vegetables. And I like the 1.5 pints because that's actually a meal for my family. 1.5 pints is one meal. But sometimes I have guests and I need more. And so being able to add another pint to something, or being able to add a quart to something, is always good. I just don't want everything in a quart jar. I'm actually the worst compared to the rest of my family when it comes to eating leftovers. Now, I won't eat leftovers from the restaurant. I just can't do it. But for my home cooking, after a couple of days, y'all, I need something else. So I'll put them back, eat something else for a couple of days, and then I can come back to it. But I am not a big fan of eating the same food over and over and over multiple days in a row. But I'm not a big fan of wasting food either. So that's why I try to cook in smaller batches so that we're not wasting a lot of food. I was comparing my grocery bill to another family a while back. And it was just a husband and a wife, just two people in their household, where I have myself, my mom, and my two girls. So we're a family of 4. They are a family of 2. They spend 3 times as much at the grocery store as I do. 3 times as much. And when I found out how much they were spending on a monthly grocery bill compared to what I'm spending, I was just like so surprised. And so we need to keep this up. We need to make sure we're feeding our family from our garden. Yeah, feed from the garden versus the grocery store can save you a ton of money. Now, some people will say, well, Kim, you had to buy soil, and you had to buy seed, and you had to buy fertilizer, and you had to water the garden, and your time. Well, I don't count my time, because to me, I just saved myself a doctor bill, because I don't need counseling now because I'm in the garden. But as far as the soil, yep, it's a big upfront purchase, but then it lasts for years and years and years to come. For the fertilizer, I am using as much compost as I can, but yeah, I do buy fertilizer, but I will buy it when it's on sale. And so yeah, there are some costs to growing your own food, but if you do it right, I promise you, it is still cheaper than going to the grocery store. And I know there's some mixed views on that. Everybody has their own view. This is my view. I know how much money I've spent at that grocery store, and I know how much money I've saved in the garden. So, my opinion. All right, let's wipe the lids or the rims. I always say lids. We're gonna wipe these rims off. We're gonna get these cooking, and then we're gonna go work on those tomatoes. And I've already done a video on tomatoes, so I will just show you top lines. I won't show you all the steps. I am going to make a pasta sauce. All right, so we got another batch going. in the pressure canner here. Now we're going to go work on those tomatoes. I will bring you back just before I jar up those tomatoes and just show you what I did. I am going to use my chopper here for the spaghetti sauce. I have some onions that are about to go bad. That's why I was looking at them. All right, it's time to take care of these tomatoes. We got all of the green beans out. All right, so for this pasta sauce, I have peppers, I have onion, I have garlic, all from the garden. In here, I also have basil, and I have oregano and celery flakes, all from the garden. I added some chili powder. That's not from the garden, unfortunately. And some pepper. And that's it. That's what's in here. So it's nice and thick. And I have a whole video out there just on how I make my tomato sauce. But this is nice and thick, and I didn't put it through a food mill. All I used is my Vitamix blender, my roaster, and that's it. So to preserve my tomatoes, and I hope I got enough, y'all. I hope I got enough. But I'm putting in a teaspoon of salt. Hopefully I got enough jars out. It's the last 4 that I've pulled together. But it's a teaspoon of salt. I'm putting in a teaspoon of sugar. And I haven't put any other salt in here though. That's it. I will finish salting to taste when I'm ready to make a meal out of it. Now I could water bath can this, but I'm not going to water bath can. I am going to pressure can. If I had huge chunks of celery or huge chunks of, what else, carrots, that kind of stuff, I would absolutely have to pressure can. I am pressure canning though because it's just faster. I'm putting in 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. You can use, what is it called, acetic acid or something like that if you don't want lemon juice. So there are options. This makes sure that you have the right acidity, right? Tomatoes should be a higher acidic food, but it depends on the type of tomato that you're using, and I'm using a mixture of tomatoes, so I just want to make sure that I have the right level of acid in there. And because I added the lemon juice, I could water bath can. I'm not doing that. I'm pressure canning. That's just the way to go this time. If you don't want to use lemon juice, you can use citric acid, but I've used lemon juice, so that's what we're going with. So I got all my ingredients in here. Let's fill these jars with this thick, rich, and y'all, I do mean it is thick, pasta sauce. This will probably be my last batch of pasta sauce this year. I have more tomatoes, but I'll do something else with them. Boy, y'all can't understand how thick this is. Whoa. This might be the best yet. I've had everybody come in the kitchen like, ooh, what smells so good? Are we having spaghetti today? Nope, not today. Not today. Had some sad faces when I said not today. And I definitely have my year supply. And I'm not out from last year. So I still have, I think, 2 more jars left from last year. So we're doing good. We're doing really good. I made up 1 jar too many. Y'all look how thick that is. Look. It won't even let go of the side of the funnel. That's how thick it is. Now my color on this is a little lighter than the color that I had on the other one, my last batch, but that's because I used some yellow and orange tomatoes in the batch. So that's the only difference. It's not a deep red because I have some yellow and orange tomatoes, but it's thick, y'all. I gotta show you just how thick this is. You're not gonna believe it. Wait till I pick this jar up and show you. Let's get our rings on. And this is our last batch today. And once this batch come out, I will show you. Oh, that's hot. I will show you our final product for the 2 days that we canned. I do want to share that you should always double check and make sure that your gaskets are where they need to be. I could never get to pressure on another batch and I couldn't figure out what was wrong. The gasket was off. So I had to start over. All right, this is going, and that's it. I'm going to clean up while we let this last batch do its job. All right, y'all, we are finished with all of the canning. So let me show you everything we got canned over the last 2 days. And it's not like we were working hard to get it done, y'all. We just took our time and we did the canning. So let me show you what we got. Look at that. Look at all that corn, the mixed greens, the green beans, or 4 cans of those, and then 5 cans of spaghetti sauce. And y'all, I don't know, but I think this is the thickest spaghetti sauce I've ever done. I mean, it smelled good. The family was sure they were getting ready to eat spaghetti. But there's the spaghetti sauce. The beans came out amazing. And of course, all of this corn. I got corn in all different sizes. Now, I will get these rings off in the next day or so because I want to make sure that they're all sealed properly and that it's not the ring that's keeping that top on there. So we will get those off. We will get those labeled up and we will get those put away into these spaces here. I've already started doing my FIFO, first in, first out, to get the older stuff in front and the new stuff in the back. And y'all, I got stuff everywhere. All under these cabinets, I have stuff. I'm sticking it wherever I can stick it because I know I don't have freezer space. And that does include this space over here as well. So we will get everything in here. We'll get it all put away. And we're going to keep that harvest coming. We're going to keep preserving. We're going to keep this going because we don't want to buy that stuff from the grocery store. I hope you enjoyed my leisure 2-day processing of all of this canned food. And if you did, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. We'll keep it coming. We'll keep it coming just for you. So until next time, and I hope there will be a next time that you hang out with me, Kim, at Kim's Cozy Corner. Bye.